So, in order to answer the question of world economic conflict, as we are so familiar with today, where should we start? Well, the unique feature of traditional Chinese culture is that the principles used in personal cultivation can be applied also to other aspects of social affairs, from family management to state governance, as well as world governance. This is because the traditional Chinese culture is based on the exploration and thorough understanding of human nature. Similarly, because human is the basis of all social sciences, there is a considerable commonality, I would say, between these subjects, and understanding one subject can help with the learning of the others. So, because economics and sociology are interdependent, let's have a brief look at the sociological teachings of Confucius so that we can have a better understanding of his economic teachings. So, to do this, we'll examine two principles in this video. So, first of all, let's have a look at the principle of universal equality. I think, to this point, Mencius illustrated this concept of equality most fully. He said, "The holy man and we are the same in kind." To be honest, I didn't quite understand this saying the very first time that I heard about this. With my mediocre intellectual ability, I interpreted this sentence as Mencius trying to encourage people to improve, even they are no match with the sages and holy men. So what I'm saying is, I'm not a holy man, right? I have bad habits, and sometimes I let the liking and disliking to get the better of me. So what does this mean? Well, both Confucius and Mencius are holy men, no doubt. And they have saved countless generations through their teaching. So they must mean what they say, not just being polite for the sake of it. They don't need to do that. Well, the sages and we are indeed different. But different in what? Now, this is an important question to ask, because a good comprehension of this issue will give us hope. Okay, give us hope when we deal with the toughest issues of the world today, including economic conflict. So let's pause for a moment and let me explain to you the meaning of the word sage. The word Buddha comes from a Sanskrit of the ancient India, and it means the awakened one who has achieved enlightenment with the most complete wisdom. That's the definition of the word Buddha. In the China world, the Chinese use the word sage or holy man, and the meaning is very close to the meaning of Buddha. In Chinese language, holy men and sage refer to the ones who understand the truth of the universe. So we as a common person are not the sage because we don't understand the truth of the universe. The Chinese call Confucius the great sage and teacher. For example, after the pupils enter the classroom, they will first bow to Confucius, and then they bow to their teacher, and then so in Buddhism, again, the Buddha is referred to as the original teacher. Okay, the original teacher or the original one. So again, the relationship between Buddha and the disciples is the one of teacher and student. Teacher, students. Okay? So as a common person, such as myself, we learn from the sages, be it the Buddha or Jesus or Muhammad, but we learn from them. Now, the method of practice, of course, is numerous, right? Because each path is different from the others, but ultimately they lead to the same goal, which is enlightenment, proper thoughts, proper viewpoints, and purity. Now, interestingly, there are different titles in Buddhism, and those titles refer to the various levels of enlightenment. So, for example, the title of Arahant refers to the one who has gained insight into the true nature of existence and has achieved nirvana. And if you put this into the modern education model, we can say that becoming an Arahant is equivalent to graduating from the primary school. Okay? The next level of enlightenment is to become a Bodhisattva. And a Bodhisattva is any person who has generated a spontaneous wish and compassionate mind to attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Now, to achieve a level of Bodhisattva is equivalent to obtaining a university degree, in a modern sense, of course. And finally, becoming Buddha is equivalent to being granted a doctor degree. So, roughly speaking, finally completing the journey of learning. Likewise, in Chinese language, the title sage and wise man also refer to different levels of learning. According to the teaching of Venerable Master Chin Kung, if we do a parallel matching, the word sage in Chinese is equivalent to Buddha, while the phrase wise man in Chinese is equivalent to Bodhisattva. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are not God. They're simply the most perfect and happiest beings for us to learn from, according to the Master. And the same goes to holy men, in the word of Mencius. Therefore, they are the teachers. We are the students. And the teachers are truly happy. And they're not confined by physical enjoyment. And we want to do that as well. We want to do the same. So with the correct method, as well as a sincere mindset of learning, also the courage to admit our wrong thoughts and correct our mind, one day the student can graduate and become a holy man himself. This is possible, simply because, as the three-character classic tells us, people at birth are naturally good. Now, some of you may know this, the three-character classics, which is read by all the Chinese when they first started learning. So all of these practicing and learnings will simply try to help us to return to our natural goodness. So for this reason, Mencius pointed out that the holy men and we are the same in kind. Now, this is extremely important because it really underpins much of the Confucian philosophy, teaching, political governance method, and economic policy. For example, from a political perspective, the Confucius sees everyone as the son of God, not just the emperor. In the general discussion in the White Tiger Palace, it says, the nomination of the Son of God is merely an honorable title. So what it means is that nobody is born with the title, even for the descendants of the kings. The son of the king may have a hereditary right to certain power, but they will have to earn the trust and support of the people with their true virtue. Without virtue, bad kings will have to be replaced, as has happened at time over and over in history. In the Book of Changes, Confucius mentioned, for example, Shang Tang. Remember him, right? Shang Tang changed the appointment of the line of Xia to the throne, and King Wu change that of the line of Shang. So you may recall this from the first lecture when we introduced the history of early China. Confucius said all of these changes or replacement are in accordance with the will of heaven and in response to the wishes of the people. In other words, the bad kings do not earn their title, even if they had it. Mencius also said that the act of King Wu was not that of a regicide, but simply the execution of an outcast. So, according to the principle of universal equality, the title of a king must be given to whoever qualified, and not just based on a bloodline, if you like. So this is the principle of universal equality. The second principle in Confucius' sociology teaching is the principle of individual responsibility. Now, Confucius, he does advocate for personal liberty. He does. But personal liberty comes with great responsibility. Well, what are we talking about? What responsibility are we talking about? Well, for a start, Confucius put great emphasis on personal cultivation, responsibility of personal cultivation. For example, in A Great Learning, he said, from the emperor down to the mass of people, all must consider the cultivation of personality the root of everything besides. The root of everything besides. Well, as a matter of fact, personal cultivation is the mother of all responsibility. As we'll learn in future lectures, we'll see that personal cultivation is the foundation of governing the state and bringing peace to the world. The ruling body is responsible to cultivate themselves, well, because, like it or not, the ruler will always function as a demonstrator for the society. So, personally acting with high moral standard is the only way to establish social justice and morality. This argument is not only, psychologically sound, but also very true. Now, I'll pick one of the many stories about personal cultivations and governance for you. Yanzi. Yanzi was a very well-known politician of the state of Qi during the spring and autumn period. Okay, so when Yanzi went to work, he always rode on a very cheap wagon. Okay, I don't know what it looked like, but it's supposed to be a very cheap wagon, low quality. Now, when the Marquis of Qi saw this, he said, "Have I not paid you enough salary? Why don't you choose a better carriage?" Well, in fact, the Marquis of Qi really cared about his lieutenant, and that's why he couldn't bear to see Yanzi, riding a battered old wagon. So after work, the Marquis asked an officer, to send a brand new carriage to Yanzi's family. But after many attempts, Yanzi always refused this gift. The Marquis was rather upset about this and said, "Look, if you still refuse my gift, I will no longer ride a carriage myself." Yanzi replied, "Well, sir, you appointed me as a supervisor of all government officials. Therefore, I reduce my material consumption, and the reason for that is to act as an example. Despite of this, I worry that people are still wasteful and live an extravagant lifestyle and are careless about their conduct. As a king, you rightfully ride a carriage, but it will be very inappropriate if I also ride a carriage as an official. This way, more people would discard justice and are encouraged to be luxurious. Without consideration of their conduct, and I won't be able to do anything to stop it. So eventually Yanzi refused the gift again. Now, as you can clearly see, personal cultivation is not just about personal morality. The higher one's position, the more influential one will be, and everything one does has a consequence. As a prime minister, Yanzi was thinking about the country and the people, as we can see. How to govern the people properly, how to give his employer a peace of mind. Now, more importantly, he knows that everything starts from his own action. Not word, but action. And this is called responsibility. So this sense of responsibility is driven by the understanding of the mechanism that people follow the example of their superior. Now, to conclude today's lecture, I would like to share with you a quote by Zheng Zi. Zheng Zi was one of Confucius' students. Zheng Zi's philosophy elaborates on the profound benefit of the attention to the funeral of parents and ceremony, and also it is a motto that underpins the ancestral remembrance ceremony that we carry out these days. Regarding the responsibility of government officials, Zheng Zi said, "The officer may not be without breadth of mind and vigorous endurance. His burden is heavy and his course is long. Perfect virtue is the burden which he considers it is his to sustain. Is it not heavy? Only with death does his course stop. Is it not long?" What it means is that the government officials must have the world in mind and make achieving world peace as his own responsibility. This requires him or her to be the most perseverant and virtuous. So only this way can he shoulder the responsibility and pressure that no one else could. In today's industry, technology-driven economy and commercial world, the responsibility of achieving world peace and harmony also falls upon economic policymakers and entrepreneurs. The close relationship between sociology and economics means that any economic activity must be organized around the 5 human relations and 5 moral constants, no matter how remote it seems. So the sole emphasis on profitability, GDP, or any other quantitative economic indicator inevitably leads to devastating social disruption. And this social disruption will certainly undermine the very economic target that we, emphasize in the first place. So I hope that you do not treat this lecture as a standalone lecture, but keep the teaching in mind when we learn about the details of the economic theories of traditional Chinese culture in the future. Thank you.